I'm really excited to share with you the brand new curriculum from Time4Learning. Time4Learning just released a brand new curriculum for middle and high school that I think you're going to love. I was actually given a chance to test out the curriculum myself before it was released, and I am so excited by what I saw. In this video, I'll show you everything that you need to know about the new courses, and we'll view some samples from the new curriculum so you can see how different it is. So let's get started. So what exactly is changing on Time4Learning? Well, it's big news because if you have seen the curriculum that they had in the past for middle and high school, that is being completely replaced. They just came out with an entirely new curriculum that was created in a professional film studio. It's designed to keep students engaged, reduce boredom, and really make sure that they understand what they're learning. So if you've tried Time4Learning for middle and high school before, or if you've seen my video on it, forget about all that because this is entirely new. But don't worry if you are a current Time4Learning customer. Your middle or high school student will have until the end of the year to finish out their current courses. But going forward, any new courses that they take will be from this new curriculum that was just released. Okay, so now let's take a look at some of the courses together so we can see what's different. We'll start with a middle school course. Let's start with an 8th grade English course. And remember, this is just a sample, so I don't have the full course to show you, but you will get a good idea of how it works. So as you can see here, if you've ever used Time4Learning before, the layout here is the same. We've got our chapters over here on the left, and each chapter has several lessons included. So let's take a look at one of the lessons here. I'll show you a sample of the new videos, and then we'll do some of the activities together. So let's go to chapter 3 here. Let's look at lesson 3.2, Myths as Oral Traditions. So here it's going to start with an activity that's designed to spark curiosity about the lesson to come. So students would read through this scenario, which is basically a sort of warm-up activity. And then they will click on Start Assignment, and they'll have 3 questions to answer. And I love that these are free-form write-in responses, not just multiple choice questions. And these will be automatically graded, but don't worry, your child can't just type in a bunch of random characters and expect to get a good grade. If they do that, they'll just get a 0 and have to retake it. After that, there is a short video to watch. Let's watch some of it together so you can see how very different this new curriculum is. And I love how some questions will pop up during the video to make sure they're paying attention and keep students engaged in what they're learning about.
Imagine you're sitting around a fire, the glow flickering on the faces around you as someone begins telling a story. Their voice rises and falls, their hands move, their expression changes. You're hooked. Now, think about that same story printed in a book. Still a great story, but something's missing, right? The way we tell a story, whether spoken or written, changes how it affects us. Today, we're exploring this question. How does telling a story aloud, compared to writing it down, change its meaning and impact? And why does this matter for keeping cultural traditions alive? But writing myths down serves a different purpose. Writing preserves the story so it doesn't change or get lost over time. It creates a fixed version that people can return to, study, and analyze. Today, many traditional myths are written down so they won't be forgotten. However, something is lost in the process. There's no storyteller bringing it to life, no audience reacting in real time. Even today, the choice between oral and written storytelling matters. A speech, a podcast, or a video can capture the immediacy and energy of a live storyteller. A book, an article, or a post ensures that a story lasts and can be shared widely, unchanged. Both have value, but they serve different purposes. So the next time you hear a story, think about how it's being told. Is it a performance shaped by the moment? Or is it a written piece of history preserved for the future? The way a story is told shapes the way it's understood, and that's the power of storytelling.
After the video, there will be a different kind of activity to complete. This one has students drag and drop the correct answers into each category. The next assignment has students read a short passage and answer some questions about what they've read. And then the next assignment here has students write their own myth of at least 3 or 4 paragraphs in length. So as you can see, there is a lot of variety to the assignments here. It's not just watch a video, answer a few multiple choice questions, watch another video. There are all sorts of different activities, and I think that is just really important. And the last activity here is a quiz. And as you can see, these are all write-in responses as well, not multiple choice. So this is a pretty challenging curriculum if you ask me, and I love that. Okay, so why don't we take a look at one more example of a middle school course, and then we'll move on to high school. Let's try U.S. history. So over on the left here are all the chapters, just like we saw with English. Let's try a lesson on the Civil War. And these are laid out in a similar way where the lesson starts with this warm-up activity. In this example, students are asked to answer some questions about a photograph. Again, these are all free-form write-in answers and not multiple choice. And then there will be a short video to watch. Let's watch it together now.
All right, historians, today we're journeying back to a pivotal moment in the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. This document didn't just shift the war's course, it reshaped its purpose. But how did it transform what the Union was fighting for? Let's step into history and find out.
It's January 1st, 1863. The Civil War has been tearing the nation apart for nearly 2 years. The Union is fighting to restore the country, and Lincoln seizes an opportunity, not with cannons, but with words.
In the Emancipation Proclamation, Lincoln stated, "All persons held as slaves within any state in rebellion against the United States shall be thenceforward, and forever free."
Wow. But did this proclamation actually free anyone? Not immediately. It only applied to the Confederate states still in rebellion, not to border states that remained loyal to the Union. So why did Lincoln issue it?
Lincoln's decision was both moral and strategic. First, it gave hope to enslaved people and abolitionists, making it clear that the war was now a fight for freedom. Second, it weakened the Confederacy, whose economy relied on enslaved labor. Third, by making slavery a central issue, Lincoln ensured Britain and France, who had both abolished slavery, wouldn't support the South.
News spread quickly. Enslaved people escaped to Union lines, and many joined the Union Army. By the war's end, 180,000 black soldiers had strengthened the North's forces, shifting the tide of the war.
However, it wasn't until June 19, 1865 that Union General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, and announced the end of slavery. This day, known as Juneteenth, is now celebrated as commemorating enslaved people's emancipation in the United States.
The Emancipation Proclamation didn't just change the war, it redefined it.
This proclamation turned the Civil War into a battle for freedom and equality, which changed how the world saw the conflict and set the stage for what would eventually be the end of slavery.
After that is a second video to watch. Then we've got another one of these drag and drop assignments. After that, students will have a reading passage and some questions to answer about what they read. Next is something new. This is actually a game they get to play where they will answer questions along the way to progress through the game. After that is an interesting activity where students will need to write a description for an online Civil War exhibit. Again, this is an assignment where students will need to write out their answer in 2 paragraphs. And then we have an end of lesson quiz here, which again has only write-in responses. Okay, so hopefully that gave you a good idea of what the new curriculum is like for middle school. Now let's jump over to high school to see a couple more examples. And then we'll talk about a couple of important things that you need to know about the new Time4Learning homeschool curriculum. Okay, so for high school, let's start with a sample from this pre-calculus course. So here is a chapter on polynomials. So the first activity here is just to review this resource sheet, which you can also download and print if you want to. Then there is a warm-up assignment here that has students write what happens to a number when certain conditions are changed. Then we have a short video here on power functions and their graphs. You can also print this lesson resource to go along with the video, which I think is great. Let's watch a clip of this video now.
Let's take a look at power functions and what they look like and what we can do with them. So a power function is any function that can be written in this form. So we have f of x is equal to k times x to the power of p, and k and p are just some constants. So let's take a look at some examples of power functions. You've seen these a lot of times before. So we have f of x is equal to x squared, and in this case 2 is our value for p, and k is going to be equal to 1 because there's no coefficient out front. In our next example, we have 2 times x to the power of 3. 3 is going to be our exponent, and 2 is going to be the coefficient in front of our x. So it is similar for the next two. So we have f of x is equal to the square root of x, and this is actually also a power function because it can be written in this form in a different way like this. So f of x is equal to x to the 1/2. It can be written in this form, which is also the power function form. So this is why it's a power function. Same thing as f of x is equal to 1 over x. This is also a power function because we can rewrite it as x to the power of -1. On the right-hand side, we can see examples of functions that are not power functions. So here we have a power function added with some constant. So by definition, this is not going to be a power function because of this constant on the right-hand side. And over here, we actually have an exponential function. We have 3 to the power of x, which is not a power function, but it is an exponential function, but we'll get to those soon. So here we can see 3 functions that are graphed on the same plane. So we have f of x is equal to x squared, which is the red curve. And as you can see right here, we have an x and y intercept at the origin, and it's going to grow to positive infinity on the right-hand side. And we can take a look at the other curves. So the higher the exponent will get, the faster it grows towards infinity. But you also, it's good to also note that they grow slower until they get to x is equal to 1, and then they start growing really rapid. All right, so now let's look at power functions with odd degrees. So we have x to the power of 3, x to the power of 5, and x to the power of 7. So they take the same form, and as they approach infinity, they grow at different rates. So the one with the higher exponent is going to grow faster than the other ones once we get to that x is equal to 1. And they also have the same shape where they are increasing for all values of x. They all have the same shape, and it looks pretty similar to any regular cubic function. And the only thing that's really different is how fast that it grows. So now let's talk about the end behavior of different types of power functions. So we're just considering the even degrees in this case. So we have f of x is equal to 2 times x squared, and we have negative 2x squared over here. So for a leading coefficient that is positive, so when we have a leading coefficient that's positive, and the degree of our power function is even, we will always have the same end behavior. So as x approaches negative infinity, it goes closer to the left-hand side, we're gonna approach positive infinity. So as x approaches positive infinity, we are also gonna have our function go towards positive infinity. So that's what's happening for end behavior of positive leading coefficients of even power functions. So now let's take a look at negative coefficients. So when we have a negative sign out front, the end behavior is going to be a little bit different. So as x approaches negative infinity, we are also going to approach negative infinity for our function. And when x approaches positive infinity, we are also going to approach negative infinity. And this is particular for power functions with a negative coefficient with an even degree. So now let's talk about the end behavior for odd degrees. So we have f of x is equal to 2x cubed. So as x goes to negative infinity, our function is going to go towards negative infinity. And as x goes to positive infinity, our function is going to go towards positive infinity. So this is for all power functions with odd degrees with a positive leading coefficient. And our last example is f of x is equal to negative 2x cubed. So the only difference between these two is this is positive and this is negative. So that's the only difference between the two. So we have negative x cubed. Let's look at the end behavior. So as x goes towards negative infinity, we are going to go, our function goes towards positive infinity. And as x goes to positive infinity, our function is going to go towards negative infinity. So we can write it like this. F of x goes towards positive infinity as x goes to negative infinity, and f of x goes to negative infinity as x goes to infinity. So that wraps it up for power functions. Remember, any power function is represented in the form k times x to the power of p, where p is the degree and k is the leading coefficient.
As someone with a degree in math, I found this to be a really great video explanation of power functions. It was really a great refresher for me, especially with those guided notes to go along with it. Next, we have a short quiz to make sure we understood what the video was teaching. Then there is another video in a similar style, along with another set of notes to print out, followed by another short quiz. And then here is an assignment where you actually have to print off and complete a worksheet and then upload it to be graded. And then the whole lesson ends with one final quiz. And there is also a final exam at the end of the course. So that's what a high school math course is like. Now let's take a look at one more course for high school. How about physics? Let's take a look at this chapter on energy and power. The first lesson here is on defining work and energy. This lesson starts with a printable resource sheet and equation sheet, so students can download and print these to go along with the lessons. Next is a warm-up exercise where students will need to respond to a prompt. After that is a video lesson with a printable resource to go along with it. Now let's watch a little bit of this video lesson together.
Energy plays key roles in many aspects about our lives. It fuels our bodies, powers our electronic devices, powers all the vehicles we're riding in, or maybe we'll ride in the future. It powers our brains, and the most important energy source in the world powers pretty much everything, our sun. So this entire chapter is going to be about energy. But before we jump into the word energy, we need to talk about work. And it's not the kind of work that you might be thinking about. So let's find out about those details in this lesson. So what is work in terms of physics? Work transfers energy between objects. And we'll talk more about that later, but that's why we need to talk about work in the first place. So in physics, work is done on an object when a force that's happening on that object is parallel to the motion. So I want you to think about those key words. The force that's happening in the object has to be parallel to the object's motion. I'm gonna do a couple demos and I want you to decide, am I doing work in terms of this definition in physics? I'm holding a crate here with my hands below it. Think about which way the force is applied on this crate compared to its motion direction. And then decide if I'm doing work in terms of physics. So I'm holding the crate, just gonna walk forward, do some circles, sideways. So am I doing work on this crate? I'm actually not doing work in terms of physics because the force from my hands is this way. It's upwards. But which direction is the object moving? It's sideways. So let's look at those directions relative to each other. So when I was holding the crate, the force applied was upwards, but the motion of the crate was sideways. And so these two arrows, are they parallel? They're not. These are perpendicular. So this is an example of no work. There's actually no work happening, even though you might consider that work because you're using some muscles to hold a crate. But in terms of the physics definition of work, I wasn't doing work on that box. My hands weren't doing work on that box. I'm gonna do a different demo. So think about the direction of the force that my hand has applying to this crate, and think about the direction of motion of the crate. I'm gonna lift it, and bring it back down. So am I doing work in terms of physics? I am in this case because the motion is up and down, and the force from my hand applied to the box is also vertical. So those two are parallel. How about now? Think about which way my hand is applying force on this box, and I'm moving it sideways. Am I doing work? This time I am, because the force is sideways, it's against this box, and I'm also moving the box sideways. So this is doing work because I have force being parallel to the motion. So let's draw a little diagram to illustrate when I was doing work. The crate and my hand was applying a force, and the motion was up and down. So this was doing work because notice these are parallel. So the force and the motion have to be parallel. Or when I was holding the box from the side, now it's horizontal force, and I was moving the box side to side. That was also doing work because they're parallel. I want you to now pause the video and decide what are some examples in your daily life where you can say you are not doing work according to the physics definition, but you might consider that you're doing work in terms of daily life. And also think of examples where you are doing work according to the physics definition.
After the video is a short quiz to check for understanding. Next, we have another video along with a printable resource sheet, followed by another short quiz. And then we have a review of what we've learned so far in this lesson. At the end of the lesson, there is a worksheet to print out and complete, then upload to be graded by the system. And finally, the lesson ends with a multiple choice quiz. Okay, so now I think hopefully I have given you a good idea of what the new curriculum from Time4Learning looks like. I'm so excited about this because it is entirely different from what they had before. Not that the previous curriculum was bad, but this one is just a lot more modern and engaging. So now let me just share with you a few other important changes that you need to know about. If you've ever used the upper middle school and high school courses on Time4Learning, then you know that the grades didn't show up on the Time4Learning platform until the next day. But now it is all integrated, so as soon as the assignments are graded, they will show up right in your Time4Learning dashboard. So that's a big improvement that I think students and parents will really appreciate. The other major change is for the parents. In the past, you couldn't really remove individual lessons or quizzes or things like that the way you could with the elementary school curriculum. Even if you did take the time to go through and remove certain lessons on the parent dashboard, they would still be available to students because the curriculum was done on a different learning management system. So even though they wouldn't show up as assignments for the student on their Time4Learning dashboard, when they actually went to go through their lessons, they would still all be there with the quizzes and everything, even if you had removed them. But that has all been changed. So now, whatever you remove or set up on the parent dashboard is exactly what your child is going to see on their own Time for Learning dashboard. So that's another really great change that I think parents will really appreciate. So I really hope you enjoyed seeing this preview of the brand new curriculum from Time for Learning. I honestly think this is probably the best online homeschooling program out there. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments and I will be happy to answer. And if you want to save $10 off Time for Learning when you sign up, make sure to use the link that I've shared with you in the video description so you can get that discount. I do plan to also do an updated Time for Learning demo and walkthrough video so you can see how to set everything up for your student. So look for that in the coming weeks. In the meantime, I have left the link for my most recent Time for Learning demo in the video description below. Thank you so much for watching.